An indigenous nationality in southeast Ecuador, the Shuar, has seen the vast majority of their lands being slotted for mining concessions without their approval, despite the fact that such a step is required by the Ecuadorian constitution. Over the last few years, mining companies have increased the pressure on indigenous communities. The production of electric cars and appliances requires an abundance of copper and rare earth minerals, which can motivate mining companies to seek out new sources of such materials at all costs. These communities are not just defending their physical territories, but the very way of life and the natural ecosystem that sustains them. We spoke to Gary Hughes from Biofuel Watch from the San Francisco Bay Area in California about the impact that the industrial hunger for copper and rare earth minerals have on farming and native communities.
Colonialism is alive and thriving. There's a lot of intact territory. And so you have communities that are really making efforts to protect their territory. You did describe what I fear is a very common, a very unfortunate and very harmful tactic of extractive industry, which is to divide communities, to divide and conquer. You know, we're seeing especially the mining sector really try to manipulate the imperative of our developing adequately and appropriately new technologies to essentially greenwash just a tidal wave of new extraction.
One of those divide and conquer projects is taking place in southeast Ecuador. After several days of travel by plane and all kinds of roads, we journey to the heart of the jungle. One of the last pristine sites on the planet. One of the most biodiverse. But also one of the most endangered areas, reaching a critical level. Finally arrived at Maycans, in Zamora Chinchipe, southeast of Ecuador, near the border with Peru. We spoke with Nancy Antun, president of the Nuncuy or Godmother Association, a group of 6 villages working together to defend their territorial rights.
The
perfect world that I'm defending as a mother and as the representative that I am, exercising my position as president of the association, is the defense of nature, water, and everything that exists in them, renewable and non-renewable nature resources. For me, and for us, all women and men without money or with money, who defend life and our territory, nature is what is most important. It is vital. We do not want that to end. The mining company contaminates rivers completely. Everyone here, both those who decide to work with the mining company and those who oppose mining, the pollution will kill us all just the same. We will all suffer, and we will all have to die contaminated. Our people cannot exist without the forest. For the Shuar, it is our world, our everything. It is our home, our pharmacy. The rivers are in our veins, the blood that flows. Without our nature, our way of life would not exist. We would be lost. Nuestro vivir no existe. Nos perderíamos.
Copper is used in a wide variety of industries, including construction, electronics, transportation, and manufacturing. Other industrial uses of copper include electrical wiring, plumbing, and electronic components. The amount of copper needed by our industry has increased due to the growing demand for electric vehicles and also planned obsolescence. Electric vehicles require significantly more copper than traditional vehicles due to the need for copper wiring and components in the electric motors, batteries, and also the charging infrastructure. According to the International Copper Association, an electric vehicle contains an average 83 kilograms of copper, compared to just 23 kilograms in a traditional gasoline-powered vehicle. As the market for electric vehicles continues to grow, so will the demand for copper. In addition to the immediate impact on communities, the extraction of raw materials can also have significant environmental impacts, including deforestation, habitat destruction, water pollution, and soil degradation. These impacts can be especially severe in areas of pristine forest, which are often home to unique and endangered species. The fact that these areas are often abandoned once the raw materials have been extracted only compounds the problem, leaving behind a wasteland that is devoid of life and unable to support sustainable development.
And this is our place, this corner, and there is no other territory we can go to. They cannot relocate us from here. As I swore on the assembly, where I was elected as president, it gives me energy, more strength, and I will continue until God gives me my last breath of existence to defend my Mother Earth.
Y seguiré hasta donde Dios me dé mi último suspiro de existir, de defender a mi madre tierra.
Claudio Anquash is Nancy's husband and is the chief of Maican's village. He stands in resistance to the project. Initially, when we got to his village, after days on the road, even though we were accompanied by a Shuar representative, for over an hour he refused to talk to us because of the mistrust and fear that the company and the people working for it have caused on the inhabitants of this little town in the jungle.
La lucha que hemos venido haciendo nosotros.
The struggle that we have been fighting is not a recent one. We have been fighting for 500 years, since the Spanish conquest, during Quiru's time. Since then, we have been fighting as warrior peoples, defending nature and everything that is our territory and its biodiversity. We have been defending it because without the forest, the Shuar people would be extinct and nothing would ensure the well-being of our generation. That is why, with our struggle, we guarantee the good living of our generation. The ministers, including Guillermo Lasso, have not given us a single response. We invited them to our territory to see the reality and our proposition for them to consider. What do we rely on? Everyone is aware of the collective rights that we exercise and that the Constitution also supports us. That is what we base our resistance on, and that is why we invited the authorities, but they did not come. I will make a second attempt to invite them once again to Mayacans, where there is mining activity, to come to an understanding and debate, and if possible, to come to an agreement. If not, we will have to consider other options. We will exhaust dialogue and diplomacy. We will also look for other ways, even to the point of creating our own nation and becoming independent of the Ecuadorian state. That is what I have in mind when they do not listen to us because they do not respect our rights. The people of Mayacans have maintained their firm position. That is what I've been thinking. Why don't they listen to us?
Claudio is not the only indigenous leader who feels almost irreconcilable differences with the Ecuadorian state. Ángel Antip is one of the most historic and respected Shuar leaders.
Well, within the indigenous movement, it's quite necessary to conserve all natural resources because they are a part of our lives and what we want to continue conserving. Of course, we have two different visions, as we are people and nationalities, while the other world consists of the mestizo, or settler population that lives for money. Therefore, we have different criteria and a reality that is quite different between the parties, making it difficult for us to understand each other. Do you know why? It's because we believe that we have to exist with the support of nature itself, which is our ally that gives us life. That's why we take care of it, not only for ourselves, but for everyone. We take care of life. But in contrast, the Western world is thinking about the world of capitalism.
Planned obsolescence is the practice of designing products with a limited lifespan to keep the clients coming back for more. And it also contributes to increased demand for copper and rare earth minerals. This is because many electronic devices and appliances contain copper wiring and other components purposefully designed to wear out or to become outdated over time, leading to replacement and disposal of the products. This creates a continuous need for new products and new supplies of copper. It is a highly profitable business model at the expense of sustainability and maybe even the survival of our civilization. Overall, the increasing demand for electric vehicles and the prevalence of planned obsolescence in many products are two factors that had contributed to the growing need for raw materials, which only increases the pressure of the market for new extraction sources, like the projects next to the Shuar communities. Josefina Tunki is the Shuar tribe president. She keeps the local families and associations together. As a chief of the nationality, she is in charge of a large portion of territory and tens of thousands of people.
As autonomous people, we have known since our ancestors, not just 500 years ago, but much longer, since we have existed in the Amazon, that we have been living, protecting, and conserving the lands as autonomous peoples. The land is very important to us because the forest contains many knowledge, life and source of resources, that is, life itself, water, forest, biodiversity, that all together provide energy, the power of existence. We have raised national and international lawsuits. That's why the company always feels upset, since they have signed agreements directly with the government, the army, the armed forces. They try to persecute us leaders. We currently have complaints and lawsuits right here. As I said earlier, the company does not represent itself directly, but rather they use our own people. They make us carry lawsuits among ourselves. The government, the armed forces, they are investigating us. They tell us that we are armed. They tell us that we are subversive. They tell us that we are terrorists.
Estamos armados. Nos dicen de que somos subversivos. Nos dicen de que somos terroristas.
It is evident that both local and national leaders of the Shuar nationality vehemently oppose the project, alluding to the constitutional requirement as expressed in Article 57 of the Ecuadorian Constitution, which dictates that the project should undergo a process of informing and obtaining free consent from the population responsible for the land. If you look at a map, you will notice that Ecuador's mining plan has filled a large part of the Shuar territory with a vast number of mining concessions. Considering that the Shuar are a nation of people who depend on the river and the forest, it is evident that such a mining plan represents a death sentence for the Shuar people and their culture.
Yawi y Warrens, y son territorios colectivos.
Now the Yawi and Warins communities, sold out to miners, our nationality's collective territories and its inhabitants know that very well. Their leaders have turned around. They initially applied the policy of resistance, the policy of maintaining biodiversity and the forest, and now they support the company. So mining companies try to divide, distort criteria, and violate the organization's life plan. And now we experience conflicts and no longer understand each other, no longer visit each other. The company confuses us with many things, and they make us live in conflicts among ourselves. But the company does not show its face, but rather make it look like we are creating problems among ourselves. The company always hides, but it's always manipulating everything. We realize that. We have these companies in our territory. In the headwaters of the Zamora River, there is the company Hexa China and the Tundaime. They are destroying everything, and we are feeling the pollution through our Santiago Zamora River, where there used to be fish, but now there are none. We now have concessions in our territories in Pessoa. We also noticed that many animals are becoming extinct. There are no longer herds of animals roaming our territory. We rarely see them. We now have concessions in our territories in Pessoa, such as the Canadian company Solaris Resources, Sorgo, Equa Sólidos, and the hydroelectric company of the Santiago River.
Que es la canadiense, la Sorgo, la Ecuasólidos, la empresa hidroeléctrica de Río Santiago.
Jose Cueva is a farmer from the Intac region in the north of the country. Along with most of the local farmers, he has resisted a copper mining project for over 10 years now.
Ocurre incluso entre familias, ¿no? Hay grupos de familias que están recibiendo.
Today, it even occurs among families. There are groups of families receiving large amounts of money. They have several family members working for the companies, while those in resistance are not beneficiaries of that. Then the division starts. There have also been cases where companies co-opt some young people from families who are in resistance, and then the breaking up starts. And then you have divisions, parents against children, for example. With the breakdown of the family fabric, it is much easier to break down the entire social fabric of communities. Many times, companies create fictitious jobs. In most cases, they have people sweeping, cleaning with machetes, cutting branches of bushes in the streets. The important thing is to generate a large mass of people working for the companies with much higher salaries than what is achieved in rural areas and agriculture. But these are still extremely low wages and really minimal expenses for these large multinational corporations. This has created a strong division in communities, in all territories, a polarization between people working for the companies and their families and people defending the territory. This has led to violent clashes, and there are many places where the same community members are facing each other, doing the dirty work of generating more division for the mining companies.
Constitutionally and philosophically, Ecuador sees itself as a green country, yet mining and oil are by far its main source of revenue. Almost 7% of its territory is slotted for mining concessions, and so far only 1.34% of that territory is being exploited, with the other 5.36% in the exploring phases. Despite that only a small portion of the mining concessions have actually started operations, many local and national anti-mining strikes have already forced the government to back down on certain issues, as documented in past episodes of this series. This is because the rural country is sparkled by villages and farming properties. Destroying rivers and valleys is not only unconstitutional but also unpopular. The more mining and oil concessions are established, the more social conflict lies ahead.
Es algo normal luchar. No estoy matando.
It's normal to fight. I'm not killing. Fighting is not killing. It's about enforcing our rights. But many people misunderstand and persecute us. Even some leaders have been killed, as happened in Tandame, in the Pangui canton. So death is normal. One has to be prepared spiritually for everything. One has to sleep. That's not scary. That's why fighting is normal for me. I'm not afraid because I'm fighting for my family, for food, for society as a whole, and for the whole world. The fight is for that, and it's not just for me. It's for everyone and every generation.
La lucha es eso, no es solo para mí, es para todo el mundo y toda la generación.
Gary Hughes from Biofuel Watch warns that the increasing drive for minerals like copper to build electric batteries in an effort to save ourselves from climate disaster are pushing already neglected communities like the Shuar in Ecuador to the brink.
To think that we can just swap out one technology for another is a very, very short-sighted view of the dilemma that we're confronting. And at the same time, the degrees of intensity that communities, for instance, in Ecuador are facing are even beyond what we're facing in the global north. And I think sometimes it's really hard for people to get their heads around how desperate the situation it is for a community that is suddenly seeing a mega mining project really come in on their doorstep. No real regulation whatsoever, no opportunity to really engage and try to even lessen the harms, much less perhaps change the direction of things and look for alternatives.
Ecuador's politicians have shown an unwillingness to apply constitutional principles that are not good business for them. In this case, they never took the time to draft and pass a law to apply the constitutional principles to protect the water and indigenous areas that are in theory protected by the Constitution, but in practice depend on the will of governmental employees of the Ministry of Energy and Mines. We made several attempts to interview representatives from the Ecuadorian government in Ecuador and after we got back, using all kinds of contacts, but more than once they specifically refused to comment, like we saw in Chapter 2 of this series. As far as Solaris, the Canadian mining company near the Warrens area, the only available representative, a PR investment executive based in Toronto, never returned our emails or calls for comment. The Shuars, Guaranis, and Quechuas, along with many other indigenous communities in Ecuador and around the world, have been at the forefront of efforts to resist the extraction of raw materials and protect their land and way of life. Their struggle is a reminder that the choices we make today will have a lasting impact on future generations, and that we must consider the social, economic, and environmental costs of our actions.